Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 671. Today we're going to take a look at Final Hour. The full name of this is actually Arkham Horror, The Final Hour. And this is a new game coming out from Fantasy Flight Games. Should be coming out soon. And the sort of marketing around it is saying it's kind of like the last hour, the final hour of maybe your Arkham Horror, your Eldritch Horror style game. And the game takes about an hour to play. So it's very, very different. Some folks have compared it to Witches of Salem, which I think is the right title. I'm not sure, which I've not played, so I don't really have a reference to that, unfortunately. But I have played the game several times. And so let's go down to the table. I'll tell you how it works, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think of the game. Okay, you can see I've got the board set up here. You can see there's a variety of locations of monsters and things like that. So a lot of this has been set out based on the great old one that I have chosen. So I just randomly picked Mordroth, however you say that. On the back here is the setup information, and then on the side here, it tells you a little bit of how they're going to activate during the game. The game comes with 3 of them. They basically bring along some different abilities and stuff like that, but then they also have these sort of very specific monsters. You can see it's got sort of carved off corner. All of these are very special and tied to a particular old one there. The rest of these monsters are in red or blue, and these of course don't have that sort of chopped off edge. These are kind of your sort of basic minions that you'll be interacting with over the course of the game. So the way that this gets set up is you're going to have a ritual location, and you mark it with that little exclamation point. And the characters, in this case I'm playing a 2-player game, start there with their tokens there. And then you're also going to have clue tokens at the other locations, these little magnifying glasses like this. And then you're going to have 3 gate locations, and they're different gate types. So there's kind of the concentric circles there, so to speak. And then down here you've got this kind of weird shifting cube thing, and these are locations here where the monsters are going to come into play over the course of the game. Now, absolutely, most importantly, before you start up, you're going to have 2 of these clue tokens face down. I'm going to go ahead and show you what they are, just so you have the idea. So you can see, oh, we've got that symbol and that symbol. Well, here you can see we've got a list of symbols there. So over the course of the game, you're going to be doing investigations and revealing some of those other clue tokens that are out there and marking off those symbols. So you're trying to, again, deduce what these final 2 are. So I'm going to hide them again. So over the course of the game, you're not ever going to look at that until you try to sort of solve the ritual and close the ritual. So over the course of the game, you're going to start to block these out. And similar to a game like Clue or some other deduction game, you're trying to figure out what these 2 are and then make kind of your last final guess to, win the game and defeat the old one and close the final gate and get rid of the ritual. That is the objective of the game. So how does a turn work? Well, there are 2 main decks of cards in the game. You have this small deck here of priority cards, and players are always going to have a hand of these cards. You see they have various different numbers on them, like that. They may or may not have 0, 1, or 2 of these little evil eye symbols. And they also, guess what, have symbols matching all of those possible clue tokens that we showed you up here on the board there. So that's also very important. So players will always maintain a hand of these cards, and each player is going to have a personalized deck equal to the character that they've chosen there. So there's a variety of characters here, and they are relatively asymmetric. There's a lot of abilities that they share, but there's also very distinct abilities. So this character here has lots of explosive devices. This one here is sort of I don't know, he's kind of a jack of all trades. She's very combat oriented. Let's find the healer here. He's in here somewhere. He's playing a guitar, this guy here. So he's kind of like the healer of the group and so on. And so they interact in different ways. Some of them are a little bit more ambiguous in terms of like what their primary role is. But some, like this fella here, are very distinct. So each player is going to have a small deck of these cards. So part of the things that you're going to do on your turn is, in turn order, you're just going to flip over and just randomly draw the top card of this deck, and every deck is made up of the same kind of cards here. So let's take a look at this. So you can see it's broken into 2 parts. This top says move up to 3 times or attack monsters at your location for 3 damage, then repair your location 2 times. Okay, that's good. The top part's always lots of fighting, very stopping the game from ending, stopping the monsters from overrunning the game. The bottom part, usually something just like this. Move up to 1 time, then investigate your location. Now remember, the investigation is the most important part, because that's how we get to know what those possibly 2 icons are at the end of the game. So move up to one-time investigate your location, oh no, but then activate monsters on all the orange zone locations 11 through 15. So a lot of times you're activating monsters, you're spawning monsters. Something bad is usually baked into this bottom action. Sometimes it's only bad stuff. You don't necessarily get to investigate. But most of the time you get to do an investigate or something and then activate monsters. And this top part is mostly with fighting and attacking monsters, repairing stuff, putting out barriers and things that the monsters are going to run into and die. So what you do is you take a look at this card and go, I have this one card in front of me. Then you put it face down, you take a card from your priority hand, you take it and then you put it on your character here like that. And then it goes around the board. So in a 4-player game, what's going to happen is each character is going to do that. Each player is going to do that. So maybe this demolition guy here, he's going to look at that card. Of course, it's going to be face down. He's going to take a look at that, read it, and then he's going to put this priority card on top of that. And so once everybody has one sort of action card with a priority card, then we're going to resolve and flip up the action cards in order of the priority cards that were placed. And the first 2, the 2 lowest numbers, are always going to do the top part of the card. The last 2 are always going to do the bottom part. Well, you say, Joel, what if you're playing with a 2-player game? Well, that's interesting you asked that, because what's going to happen is this character is going to go, then this character is going to go, and it's going to come back to me. So I'm going to do a second card, and then we'll flip that up and we'll choose that from our hand, let's say, and then the other player will do that, and then they will choose a card from their hand and they'll play that. So you're always going to have 4 no matter the player count. So in a 3-player game, whoever the first player is will get a second card and the other players will just get 1. But you always have 4 out in a 4-player game. 2 will resolve the top part, and then 2 will resolve the bottom part of their cards. And then you just kind of do what they say. You move around, you fight things, you do damage, you repair locations. Let's talk a little bit about the actions. They're really straightforward. Now when it tells you to move, you're going to move along paths like this, but you can also see there's arrows here, and that's where the different colored monsters, blue or red, are going to move. So the monsters might, they're not just going to walk on the road like everybody else, but the characters have to move along these paths. So if it tells you to move, you move along the paths to the adjacent locations. There's not really a spot for your character, you just kind of, put them next to it. It's not the end of the world. So if you move there, if you're going to repair a location, some monsters will damage locations here, and they're going to eat up spots where monsters may go. So if you want to repair it, obviously let's just fix that. And then if you're going to seal off a location, let's say you would put it here. Now this will be, you'll put it along a walkway. But if a monster moves into that, they're going to move into it and immediately die and go back to the pile, and then you're going to flip that over so it's broken. The next one that comes along might run into it, they'll die, and then that'll come off. So this is kind of like a little spiky barrier that is going to theoretically kill these 2 monsters before it gets removed. Now if you're fighting monsters, let's say this gal moves down here and it tells her do 3 damage worth to the monsters. So you just split that up how you like. So we've got 2 hit points there and 1 hit point there. You split it apart and you kill those off. Now if we had a situation like this, of course, we'd have to kind of make a decision. Did we kill both of these? Did we kill this one? You probably kill that one. That one's a little bit nastier. And then, so you just have to kind of divide up the damage between them. So of course, when it tells you to investigate, you'll take and flip this up. Oh, look at that. Sometimes it won't be an icon. It'll actually be a little key here. And you kind of don't want those because you want to keep finding the investigation icons, but it's not the end of the world, because then at that point you'll draw a card off the top here of this investigation deck, and that's going to give you a cool ability. And I would say 7, 8 times out of 10, I think there's about 10 cards in here, they're really good and worth it, and you're going to make good use of these. But sometimes I'll draw a card and be like, that sucked. I would rather have gotten an icon, but that's okay. That's kind of part of the game. So that's kind of how a player turn will work. Everybody will kind of resolve their action cards in order, and depending on the number of players, certain characters might get a different number of turns. Of course, at the end of the round, the first player marker will move, and so we'll change that a little bit. Then you're going to activate the monsters theoretically on a player turn, especially if you use the activate the bottom side of the card. And when it tells you to activate a monster, you're just looking at these little icons here. So like this fella here, these cultists or whatever aren't going to do anything. Now there's 3 icons that you're going to see. You're going to activate them in a certain order as well. Let's find a mover. Here's a mover here, like that. So you're going to activate these here with the little head first. That's just going to do 1 damage to any player that's standing there. Now in the game, there's always going to be 12 hit points. You're going to divide those equally among the number of players. Again, we're playing a 2-player game, so we'll have 6 each. And so in this case, whenever a character takes damage, you're going to flip over one of their hit point icons into the gray side. Now, one of the ways that the players will lose the game is if any player has at any moment no red hearts. If they're all gray, which means they've taken their last point of damage, bam, players have all lost together. So you got to watch out where you're standing. Now the next icons that will activate in a location is the arrows, and these are always going to move according to the color of the monster and the color of the arrow. So you can see red and blue both move up this way. So we're going to take any movers and move them accordingly. And then the other thing to keep in mind though is, let's say this was full here. Let's put that back there. And we had been activating a different location, maybe this one. So this blue one's going to come in here, but hey, he's got nowhere to stay. So he's just going to keep moving. And it's theoretically possible, as the game kind of fills up with monsters, as well as these destruction tokens here, that there's a lot of places these monsters are going to skip. And if you ever have to add a monster to this ritual location and you can't, then the players have lost the game and the ritual has been performed, they've overrun that location, and then you've lost catastrophically. So you got to be very careful about where the paths are, where these little destruction icons are, and be very mindful of not letting the board fill up too much. So yeah, you're trying to do investigations and all that stuff, but you're also trying to keep the monsters from overrunning everything. Now the last icon here is this guy here, and these are the little destruction ones. So what they're going to do normally, let's take him away, is just when you activate him, he's just going to put a destruction icon there. But let's say, oh, another turn comes along, we're going to do it again. There's nowhere for this to go. Guess what's going to happen now? He's going to go ahead and destroy that, but then he's going to scoot his boot, and he's going to get moving there. So these guys just move around the board, leaving a path of destruction. So you got to watch out for them. They're usually a little bit harder to kill too, like I showed you. So that's all that's going to happen on the player turn. And then you're going to take a look at all the cards that players have played. And you can see these icons on here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to count those up, and then you're going to look at the old one that's in play, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you're going to activate his ability or her ability based on the number of icons there. And obviously the more of them that are activated, the worse is whatever thing he's going to trigger is going to be. And all of them perform differently. I would sort of rank them in ranking of easiest to hardest. I mean, the game tells you to play Cthulhu out the gate, which is not normally the easiest one, but he's definitely the easiest one, although the only one I haven't beat. And then Shudmel, which I've beaten, I would call him probably second hardest, and then Urmoth, which is probably the third hardest. Although I don't know, it's not, none of it's easy. But yeah, so they have a special ability they're going to activate, and then the final action of the turn is to spawn a new gate. You have 8 gate tokens here, and this is kind of a game timer. So if you haven't solved the ritual, which I'll get to in just a second, by the end of the last round, when we flip over this gate token, then you will have lost the game. So you do get a chance after that last one, I should say, just to be clear, to solve the ritual. But you got to do it then, or else the game is just over. So when you flip one of these gate tokens, you flip it up, and then you're going to find the matching gate on the board, and you're going to put it in a stack with the other gates just like it. And then you're going to spawn monsters equal to the number of gates that are currently there. So in this case, we're going to put that there. We're going to draw 2 gates out of this bag, which doesn't come with the game, but it's easy enough just to throw them in the box top and not look at it when you draw. And then draw those 2 monsters out and place them on that location. And again, if this is full, then you're going to go to place it, and then you're going to start moving it again because it's full along whatever colored path there. So, and there's like, I think there's 4 each of these. So sometimes you'll like draw 4 of the same one, you know, and then just this gate will just be like vomiting monsters all over the board because just the areas all fill up around it. So now at this point, after drawing the gate token, you have an opportunity to solve the ritual. You won't be doing that in the first several turns, but towards the end of the game, the last, second to last, maybe the third to last turn, you might give it a shot. So again, as this kind of board fills up with the different icons, you're going to know, like for example, hey, we know there's no of these crescent moons here. Everybody's going to have a hand of these cards here. And you're going to take a look at these icons that you have left. And part of the decision making of what cards to play as the game evolves is going to involve these tokens. So if you have a crescent moon in your hand looking at these cards here, towards the end of the game, don't keep that card. You want to play it even if it has multiple eyeballs on there. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take 3 cards out of your hand, and then everybody's going to do this simultaneously, and then you're going to submit it and then look at them. And you need twice the number of players with matching tokens to win the game here. So if I had submitted those like this, then I've got 1-2 matches already. So in a 2-player game, we need 4 matches. So hopefully the other player has the other matches. Maybe they have some of these, or they have some clubs. I actually had 3 of these, but maybe I was hedging my bets because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's one of them. I don't know what the other one is, so I'll throw that in there, try to get the second match. But you have to just get, so if you're playing 4 players, you need 8 matches with these. And so if it's the same, which it could be like this, like that, then each of the cards is going to count double like that. So that's a little bit tricky situation. So as long as you do that by the end of the game, and you haven't lost one of your heroes or had the ritual location overrun, then you will have solved the ritual and won the game. Okay, so that is final hour. Let's go into my 3 pillars of review. First, we'll talk about playtime, because that's simple. It's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour. I've not had a game go anywhere over an hour except for the first time I played it, which was 4 players. Everybody was new. And even then, I'm not sure it took a whole hour once we started playing. This is a very solid 45. They should call the game Final 45 Minutes. No, they shouldn't do that. But it's going to come in under an hour, I think, even with 4 players, as you sort of know the game. Because the number of actions that you get, no matter what the player count is 4 per turn. It just matters how many players are doing it. Now, in terms of the player count that I actually like the most, it's also a very clear answer in this case, and that's 2 players. Now, with 4 players, it gets a little nuts, because you don't really see what actions they're doing. You only get the 1 card, and it can just kind of go sideways on you. Now, it actually gets a little easier to win the game as you get the player count down. I think single player might be a little bit on the too easy side. Now, I've not tried the great old ones on a hard difficulty level, because each of them has an easy, a normal, and a hard difficulty. Because I've only won the game twice on medium difficulty, actually. I'm sorry, no, that's not right. 1 on easy, 1 on medium. The same guy, whatever this guy's name is here. What's his name? Shud Mel. Shia Lute. So I beat that one. For some reason I can't beat Cthulhu. That's supposed to be the easy one. I almost beat Cthulhu once, and I would have won it. We had it where we had solved. We knew what we were going to solve, but then it killed us in the last turn. Anyway, so let's talk about player count. 2 players is the best, because there's a little bit of control and back and forth that you have between you and the other player, but there's just enough that you don't know that's going on. Because as you kind of like learn the different character decks, you kind of know what their deck is about. Because you're not really supposed to talk about anything that's on the cards or anything, but you can sort of, if they play a low card, you're like, okay, they really want to not play the bottom of their card, because the bottom of the card is always bad stuff. And so if they're really trying to stay away from the bad stuff, that's not going to be good. So you kind of want to let them do that. When you look at your card, you're like, okay, that's not so bad. I get to investigate and all that kind of stuff. And so as you kind of learn the different character decks, there is some different interesting stuff that goes on there. They're not like drastically different, like I was saying in the walkthrough, but there's enough kind of difference that you kind of get to know them, which is good, because it kind of allows the replayability to come through. And then there's some interesting tricks that you can do with the moving around and stuff like that, because as you start to investigate, those investigate tokens go away. And whenever you get an investigate action, it says move 1 space and investigate. And after a while, you're like, there's no investigate tokens there. I've got to move multiple spaces. So you might just move the top action, even though it says investigate. It's pointless to do it, because you're not going to be investigating anything, and then you're going to be activating a bunch of monsters without having investigated. So as you sort of like move around the board and position your characters in certain ways so that they can sort of take care of certain areas, there's some interesting discussion there and teamwork and stuff that goes on. So I would not play it with 4 players. I just would be hesitant like playing it with people for the first time, because then they're just like, oh, wow, this was a wacky nightmare. But if you've played it a couple of times, you kind of start to sort of suss out a little bit of the puzzle that there is to solve, and you can kind of start to learn the DNA. It's a very funky, different game. I mean, it's not like I do this action and do this. It's like I flip this card and go, oh God, I don't want to do that. Or it would be really good to do that, but play a low card. You're not supposed to communicate that, but you're like, eh. So you do that and you play the card. And then at the end of the game, you've got those cards that you're playing, the priority cards, and you're like, well, I don't want to play this one because I need to keep this one because this might solve the clue at the end. This other one has this horrifying 2 triangles on it. We've already got 2 out there. We're just going to activate the monster and do all this stuff. So there's all this like weird stuff. It's just so different of a mechanical game that I really, really do enjoy the game. So again, what is this game like now moving into the third pillar? Apparently it's like Witches of Salem, which I've never played. I mentioned that in the intro. I don't know. It doesn't really feel like I'm playing another Arkham game though, which is good. I mean, you could say, oh, it's just like because Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror, the Arkham Horror LCG, the 2nd and 3rd edition of Arkham Horror, like they all have this kind of same vibe. You get 2 actions, you move here, you do that, you investigate, you fight, the monsters activate, all that stuff. This kind of has that same flow, but not really. All the whole card action play, priority card thing, that is just, I mean, if you skip the walkthrough, you're like, what's he talking about? Go watch that. It's funky. It's very different. And just the deduction side at the end of it is awesome. I love that because it's not just like go and do this thing and fight stuff and move this token somewhere. It's like you are sort of like figuring out these clues. And then a lot of times, the way that this game is shaken out as I've played it a few times, is you are usually threading that needle in that second to last, third to last, and last round of like, can we go another round? Should we just try to solve the ritual? Because you can see some of the stuff that you've uncovered, and you're like, you look at my hand of priority cards, you're like, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape if I play my priority cards. What about you? And then you might be like, hell no, we shouldn't solve that ritual because all the cards I have match all the stuff on the board. So I know it's not these cards. So, you're like, well, maybe I have this one card. So between us, we're going to be playing 6 cards. If you've got enough, if we're playing 2-player game, if you got enough, then we can play it. And it's like, well, if we go to do another round, I don't think we're going to make it. So there's this good discussion that happens at the end of the game about how much you should try and go for it. Or, do you try to last another round? That's a really interesting part of a game that I don't really see in it. And like, especially in a co-op game where it's like, let's play. And they're like, well, should we try to win now? Because I don't think we're going to live if we don't try to win now. And then it's just that's a cool discussion that it feels very cinematic and thematic that you could see these characters in this nightmare scenario really kind of arguing over the plan. Because don't they do that? Like you watch Stranger Things or, alien movies or something, and they're arguing about what we should do. No, I think we should go down the right hallway. No, I think we should set the bomb here. I think we should hack into the computer and do this. That it's very abstract in this case, but it lends itself to that kind of cool discussion of like, let's solve the mystery. And the one, character's like, I know the answer. And the others are like, I don't know. I don't think we should go. And so that's a cool part of the game. And I think in this case, to kind of close out, the playtime lends itself to making this an enjoyable game because it can be a little bit wonky and hit you over the head sideways, and the whole action priority mechanic is very funky. If this was like a 2-hour game, I don't know that I could deal with it. But if it's like coming in at a 45-minute game, and like I said, playing it with the 2-3 players in there is a good count. It's a very nice kind of interesting filler, funky deduction game. And it kind of stands, apart from other games there. And if you get, walloped over the side of the head and lose in 30 minutes, it's easy to set up and play again. Like, you could play this a couple times in an hour, hour and a half, and I think it's going to be satisfying. So I get a definite recommend to Final Hour. I wish I'd played Witches of Salem. Maybe I could compare it to that. But I don't know anything about that game, but this is a really cool, different, interesting, unique game. It definitely, at least take a look at it. It's funky. It may not be for everybody, but I really love the game, honestly. So that's Final Hour. Thanks.